I just celebrated my 48th birthday. At this time of year, my wife of 22 years, Olivia, always throws me a surprise party. But ever since she joined that damn yoga class, our marriage has been falling apart. It was almost a year ago when Olivia said she needed something to do to regain her confidence. I remember us browsing the Meetup website and discussing which activities she should join. She ended up taking a yoga class 3 times a week. I wanted to come along, but my work schedule was too irregular. I'm a software engineer working for a new tech company, and Olivia always says I'm a workaholic, but honestly, I do enjoy the fulfillment of my work. I've started my own company, but I eventually chose the relatively easy life of a part-time job. Olivia is 42 years old. At first, I thought she was just going through some kind of midlife crisis. She has certainly put on weight over the years, especially during the epidemic when she was working from home. Although she has been exercising and dieting at home, the results have not been very visible. The prolonged isolation at home had also taken a toll on her mood. The kids have all left for college, and we are the only ones left at home. I've never complained about her changing size, but I've always encouraged her. I understand that it's a normal part of aging, and I'm not much better myself. Truth be told, Olivia was the better looking of the two of us. She loves to dress up and enjoys the compliments she gets when she goes out. She works in marketing and has always been conscious of her image. I'll never forget the night Olivia came home from her first yoga class. She was so sore that she collapsed on the couch. I massaged her feet and thighs, and she couldn't stop talking about the class, with a sparkle in her eye that hadn't been there in a long time. "Michael, you should see our yoga instructor, Jake. He's a human sculpture," Olivia exclaimed. "But don't worry, he's a little too cocky." I laughed and didn't think much of it. But over the next few weeks, the name Jake began to come up in our conversations more often. "Jake's showing off his tattoos again today. Jake said he used to be a rocker." "How interesting." Jake recommended an essential oil that he said was especially good for muscle relaxation. At first, I didn't care. But over time, I began to feel a twinge of unease. But as time went on, I began to feel a twinge of unease as Olivia's comments about Jake changed from cocky to funny and charming. I told myself that it was just her enthusiasm for something new and that it would soon fade. However, I was wrong. This was just the beginning. Our 22-year marriage was about to go through a storm I never expected. I remember it was a Thursday night and I got off work later than usual. The moment I pushed open the door to my house, an unfamiliar scent hit me. It wasn't the same perfume Olivia was accustomed to, nor was it the incense we always kept in the house. This scent was much stronger, with a hint of oriental mystery. "Honey, I'm home," I called out, while taking off my jacket and hanging it on the coat rack by the door. Olivia poked her head out of the kitchen with a slightly flustered smile on her face. "Oh, you're back. I'm getting dinner ready. It'll be ready in a minute." I walked into the kitchen and tried to give her a hug, but she deftly avoided it and turned to check the dishes in the oven. I noticed she was wearing a new yoga outfit, and her hair was still a little damp, obviously having just taken a shower. "How was yoga class today?" I asked casually, trying to hide the uneasiness rising in my mind. "It's great. Jake taught us some new breathing techniques," she said with a hint of excitement in her tone. "By the way, this is the essential oil he recommended. Says it helps relax the muscles. Do you like the smell?" I forced a smile. "It's okay, a little thick." At dinner, Olivia rambled on about yoga classes while I was distracted. The scent, if any, kept lingering in my nose, making me feel inexplicably irritated. One evening a few days later, the two of us had a rare intimate moment. As I kissed Olivia, I smelled a faint odor of marijuana. I froze, unable to believe what I was feeling. "Olivia, have you been smoking marijuana?" I asked directly. Her eyes twinkled for a moment, then she smiled and said, "Oh, that? A couple people were smoking it after class, so I tried a puff." "Don't make a big deal out of it, Michael." I felt a surge of anger come over me. "You know how we raise our kids, and now you're doing this to yourself? What if Emily or Noah finds out?" Olivia rolled her eyes. "Come on, Michael. I'm not an addict. Just relaxing once in a while. You're always making such a big deal out of it." Not wanting to argue any further, I turned and left the bedroom. In that moment, I felt more distant than ever between us. On Thanksgiving, things got worse. We had invited the kids home for a reunion, but Olivia was nowhere to be found all morning. When she finally showed up, it was almost dinner time. "I'm sorry, I was visiting a friend," she explained vaguely, "and had car trouble." Emily frowned. "Mom, you do realize it's Thanksgiving, right? We're all waiting for you." I looked at Olivia. Her eyes were wandering and she was obviously lying. I didn't want to expose her in front of the kids, but I could sense Emily sensing something unusual. After dinner, Emily pulled me aside. "Dad, what's wrong with Mom? She seems not quite right." I took a deep breath, not knowing how to answer. Finally, I decided to tell part of the truth. "Your mom recently joined a yoga class and met some new friends. It might have just been a little too involved." Emily nodded thoughtfully, but I could tell she wasn't entirely convinced by my explanation. As I lay in bed that night, I realized that our marriage was going through a silent crisis. I loved Olivia, but I was beginning to wonder if I even knew her anymore. Worse, I wasn't sure she still loved me. It was a normal workday after Thanksgiving. I was in my office focusing on a complex code problem when suddenly my cell phone vibrated. It was a notification from the bank. $2,000 had been withdrawn from our joint account. My heart skipped a beat. It was enough money to pay our mortgage for a month. I immediately called Olivia to ask for clarification, but she didn't pick up. I tried a couple more times and still got voicemail. Unease spread through me. I tell myself that maybe she's just in a meeting or her cell phone ran out of battery. But a little voice whispers in my head, or maybe she doesn't want to take your call. I couldn't concentrate on my work anymore. I told my team I needed to take care of some personal business and left the office early. On the drive home, my mind raced, trying to come up with a plausible explanation. As I turned onto the street where our house was located, I saw a motorcycle I had never seen before parked in front of our house. It was a vintage Harley-Davidson, the shiny chrome gleaming in the sun. I've always had some interest in motorcycles, and the workmanship on this one was obviously worth a lot of money. I pulled into the driveway, my heart racing. I gently opened the front door, trying not to make any noise. The house was silent, but I could sense someone was there. Suddenly, I heard a soft thud from the backyard. I rushed to the back door just in time to see a tall figure go over our backyard fence and disappear from sight. The man was agile and obviously worked out regularly. I stood in the backyard and felt a wave of vertigo. There was a faint odor of marijuana in the air, mixed with that essential oil aroma that I was now familiar with. My brain refused to accept the reality in front of me, but the evidence was there. Just then, I heard Olivia call my name from inside the house. I take a deep breath and walk back inside. Olivia stood in the kitchen, her hair wet and wearing a bathrobe. The expression on her face is a mixture of surprise and, is it fear? "Michael, why are you back so early?" Her voice trembled a little. I looked her straight in the eye and tried to control my emotions. "I see $2,000 missing from my bank account. Do you know what's going on?" Her eyes twinkled for a moment. Then she said, "Oh, that? I lent it to a friend in my yoga class. She's having some financial difficulties, and I wanted to help her out." I felt a surge of anger rise up. "You loaned $2,000 to a friend you met in yoga class? Without consulting me?" Olivia looks a little flustered. I don't think it's a big deal. She said she'd pay it back soon." I take a deep breath and try to calm down. "So, can you explain why someone escaped from our backyard? And whose motorcycle is that parked outside?" Olivia's face turned white instantly. "What motorcycle? I don't know what you're talking about, Michael. Are you so tired from work that you're hallucinating?" I stared at her, struggling to believe that she had lied so blatantly. In this moment, I realized that our marriage was on the edge of a cliff. I didn't know how to save it, and I wasn't even sure it was still worth saving. "Olivia," I said calmly, "we may need to have a talk, but not right now. I need time to calm down." With that said, I turned and walked towards the den, leaving Olivia standing alone in the kitchen. I closed the door and leaned against the wall, feeling a wave of exhaustion and heartbreak like no other. I knew that from this moment on, nothing would ever be the same again. That night, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Olivia slept peacefully beside me as if nothing had happened. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about what to do next. I knew that a direct confrontation wouldn't go well. I needed more evidence. Early the next morning, I went to a nearby electronics store. The clerk enthusiastically recommended various smart home devices to me, but my goal was clear. I bought a set of high-definition doorbell cameras and a couple of small and hidden wireless cameras. When I got home, I told Olivia it was to improve home security. She just shrugged and didn't seem to care. Installing these devices was easier than I thought it would be. The doorbell camera is right outside the front door, while the other cameras I cleverly hid in various corners of the living room, kitchen, and backyard. All of the devices are connected to my cell phone, so I can check on my home at any time. This behavior made me feel a twinge of guilt. I told myself it was to protect our marriage, but deep down, I knew it was more of a betrayal. However, I had no choice. For the next few days, I went to work as usual, but my attention was always on my cell phone. Whenever there was movement, I would immediately check it. Most of the time, it was just Olivia doing chores or watching TV, but I noticed that she was often sitting alone in the backyard, looking to be on the phone, with a smile on her face that I hadn't seen in a long time. Just when I thought the surveillance might be futile, things took a turn for the worse. It was a Wednesday afternoon, and I was chairing an important project meeting. Suddenly, my cell phone vibrated like crazy. I stole a glance and saw a strange man standing in front of my house. My heart was racing and my palms were sweating. I barely maintained a professional expression as I continued to discuss the details of the project, but my thoughts have long since flown to the house. I felt a wave of vertigo as I saw Olivia warmly welcome the man inside. I could not continue the meeting any longer. I made a random excuse and hurriedly ended the discussion. My coworkers looked at me confused, but I couldn't be bothered to explain. I rushed out of the office, jumped into my car, and drove home as fast as I could in my life. On the way, I kept refreshing my cell phone screen. I saw the man, who I could now clearly see was Jake, Olivia's yoga instructor, sitting on my couch, relaxed and sipping a beer. Olivia was sitting next to him, the two of them talking, laughing, and being intimate. My hands are so tight on the steering wheel that my knuckles are white. I braked sharply at the red light, drawing angry curses from the driver behind me. But I turned a deaf ear, my eyes glued to the screen of my cell phone. When I finally arrived home, almost 40 minutes had passed. I tiptoed to the door, took a deep breath, and then opened it with my key. The house was silent. I walked into the living room and found Olivia sitting alone, watching TV. She turned her head, seemingly surprised by my sudden appearance. "Michael, what are you doing home so early?" I looked around and there was no sign of Jake. The familiar scent of essential oils lingered in the air, mixed with a hint of beer. I wasn't feeling too well, so I came home early, I lied. "How was your day?" Olivia's eyes twinkle for a moment before she flashes a smile. "Oh, just a normal day. Did yoga and watched a little TV." I nodded, pretending to believe her, but my insides were roaring. I knew she was lying. I'd seen everything with my own eyes, but I couldn't expose her yet. Not yet. I walked towards the bathroom, needing to cool off. As I closed the door, I catch a whiff of fresh body lotion. Olivia has obviously just taken a shower, trying to cover all traces of it. Standing in front of the mirror, I stared at my reflection. I saw a tired, hurt, skeptical man. I didn't know what to do next, but I knew that our marriage had come to a point where it couldn't be undone. For the next few days, I wandered through my life like a ghost. On the surface, I tried to maintain a normal daily routine, going to work, coming home, gossiping with Olivia. But deep down, I was waging a hidden war. I began installing more surveillance equipment in the house. In addition to cameras, I placed sound-activated recording devices in the living room and in Olivia's usual den. Each time I did this, I felt a sharp pang of shame. It wasn't me. I'd never been a snooper, but I needed to know the truth, no matter how heartbreaking it was. Over the weekend, Olivia said she was going to a yoga workshop and would be gone all day. I used this opportunity to start going through the recordings and videos I've collected over the past few days. At first, most of it was pretty normal. Olivia was talking on the phone, watching TV, doing chores. But when I heard her conversation with Jake, my heart sank to the bottom. "Jake, you were amazing," Olivia's voice was filled with a sweetness I'd never heard before, and yesterday's massage left me feeling refreshed. Jake's low chuckle came out of the speakers. "I'm at your service anytime, my dear. Whenever you need it." I continued to listen as each word pierced my heart like a knife. They discussed their plans for the next time they saw each other, and Jake complained that they couldn't see each other more often. "You know how much I want to be with you," Jake said. "But your husband," Olivia sighed. "Michael is always working. He doesn't even notice the changes in me. Sometimes I think he cares more about his computer program than me." I sat there and felt a wave of vertigo. Was this what she saw me as? A boring workaholic? I thought back over the past days and realized how the distance between us had widened a little. But that doesn't excuse her from betraying me. I decided to investigate Jake further. Utilizing his full name and some of the information I knew, I started searching online. Soon, I found his social media accounts. In the photos, Jake looked young, handsome, and energetic. I looked at those photos and compared the differences between myself and him with bitterness in my heart. The next day, I took the day off. I drove to the gym where Jake worked and parked in the coffee shop across the street. I wasn't sure what I was expecting to see, but I needed to witness something. About an hour later, I saw Jake walking out of the gym. He was wearing funky workout clothes and carrying a guitar bag. Looks like yoga instructor isn't the only thing he is. I watched him skillfully straddle that Harley motorcycle and couldn't help but think of the image of him riding it to my house. I followed him, keeping a safe distance. He eventually stopped outside an upscale bar in the center of town. I hesitated, but walked in. In the dim light, I see Jake standing on the stage, tuning his guitar. It looked like he was going to be performing here tonight. I find a seat in the corner and ask for a whiskey. Jake put on a great show, I have to admit. His vocals were low and charismatic, and his guitar skills were quite good. I looked at the audience on stage, especially the women, who had a gleam of adoration in their eyes. I suddenly understood why Olivia was attracted to him. Just as I was about to leave, I saw a young woman approach Jake. She embraced him warmly, and then the two of them talked intimately. My heart sank again. It seems Olivia is not the only woman in Jake's life. I sat alone, feeling more alone and betrayed than ever. My wife was cheating on me and her lover was cheating on her. The world had suddenly become so absurd and ridiculous. When I finally get home, it's late at night. Olivia is waiting for me in the living room with a worried look on her face. "Michael, where have you been? I've been calling you." I looked at her and felt a sudden wave of exhaustion. Should I tell her I know everything? Or continue this pathetic game? I just needed some time alone. I finally said, "Work stress, you know?" She nodded, seemingly relieved. I walked towards the bedroom, leaving her alone in the living room. Lying on my bed, I stared at the ceiling, thinking about what to do next. I knew that our marriage had come to an end. The question now was how to end it with the least amount of damage. Over the next few days, I began to prepare for the coming storm. I knew that once I revealed the truth, our lives would change forever. I needed to be prepared for anything. First, I started secretly collecting our financial documents. For years, I've been responsible for managing my family's finances, so this wasn't difficult. I scrutinized our bank accounts, investment portfolios, and retirement accounts. Bitterness filled my heart when I saw the wealth we had accumulated together. What should have been our shared future could now be the object of division. I specifically noted that my 401k account has accumulated a sizable amount, about $870,000. In comparison, Olivia's retirement account is only about $45,000. I realized that this could be a point of contention in a divorce proceeding. In the process of organizing my files, I stumbled upon something disturbing. In Olivia's dresser drawer, I found a small bottle of CBD oil and several bottles of prescription medication. Upon closer inspection of the labels, I realized these were antidepressants. I never knew Olivia was taking these medications. This discovery made me feel both shocked and guilty. I was so focused on my work that I didn't notice that she was experiencing emotional distress. But that doesn't excuse her from betraying me, I tell myself. The next day, I had an appointment with a reputable divorce attorney. When I walked into his office, I felt a pang of unreality. I was considering ending my 22-year marriage. Mr. Michael, the lawyer said, before we begin, are you sure you want to go down this road? Sometimes marriage counseling may help. I laughed bitterly. Trust me, we're past that. For the next 2 hours, we discussed the divorce process, property division, and possible custody arrangements. Although our children are adults, the court will still consider their welfare. The attorney told me that given the length of our marriage and my higher income, the court might be inclined to split our assets, including retirement accounts, equally. The news sent a wave of anger through me. The wealth I had worked so hard to accumulate over the years was now to be divided among someone who had betrayed me. But I know that now is not the time to get emotional. I need to be calm and rational about this. After leaving the lawyer's office, I made a bold decision. I went and bought a GPS tracker. I knew it was a gray area morally and legally, but I needed hard evidence. Olivia went to bed early that night. I snuck out of the house and into the garage. My hands were a little shaky, but I managed to install the GPS under her car. After doing this, I felt both relieved and disgusted. The next morning, Olivia tells me she's going to an all-day yoga workshop. I nodded, pretending not to care. But in reality, my heart raced, knowing this was an opportunity to validate my suspicions. I sat at my computer, staring at the interface of the GPS tracker. At first, everything seemed normal. Olivia's car drove to the yoga studio she frequented and then parked there for a few hours. But just when I thought I might be wrong, her car suddenly started up and drove to an address I'd never seen before. I immediately jumped into my car and followed. The GPS took me to an upscale apartment complex on the outskirts of the city. I parked across the street and watched as Olivia's car pulled into the underground parking lot. A few minutes later, I saw her and Jake walking out of the elevator together. They were holding hands and talking intimately, completely oblivious to their surroundings. I felt a wave of vertigo, and even though I had prepared myself before this, witnessing this scene still sent a sharp pain through me. I sat in the car and watched them disappear into the apartment building. I don't know how long I sat there. It could have been minutes, it could have been hours. When I finally started the car, I felt a strange sense of calm. Now I had all the evidence I needed. It's time to end this. That day was our company's most important product launch. As the lead software engineer, I should have been fully focused on preparing my presentation. But there was only one thought in my mind. Today is the final judgment day. I stood on stage and mechanically presented our latest software product. The stage was filled with tech journalists and potential investors, their eyes glued to me. I forced myself to smile and tried to sound passionate. This AI-powered platform will revolutionize the way we handle big data, I said. It can analyze and process millions of pieces of data in seconds, identifying those that humans may have overlooked. Just then, the cell phone in my pocket vibrated. I glanced at it, and it was a notification from my smart doorbell. Someone had rung the doorbell. My heart suddenly raced, as if the heavens had given me the perfect opportunity for a showdown. I knew Olivia was supposed to be home today, and it had to be that damn lover Jake at the door. I continued my speech, but my attention was completely distracted. When I finally find a chance to check my phone, I once again see the sickening image of Jake standing in front of my house and Olivia warmly welcoming him in. I felt a wave of vertigo. My palms began to sweat and my voice became shaky. The audience off stage began to talk to each other, obviously noticing my abnormality. "Excuse me," I said abruptly. "I need to pause. Technical problem." I hurried off the stage and rushed backstage. My coworkers looked at me confused, but I couldn't be bothered to explain. I grabbed my jacket and rushed out of the venue. "Michael," I heard my boss yell behind me. "Where are you going? We're not done yet." "There's a family emergency," I said without looking back. "I have to go." I jumped into my car and started the engine. I knew I had probably just ruined my career, but at the moment I didn't care. I just wanted to go home and see the truth for myself. I was driving at an unprecedented speed, running through red light after red light. My cell phone kept ringing, probably my coworkers or boss calling, but I ignored it all. When I finally arrived home, I saw Jake's motorcycle parked in the driveway as usual. My hands were shaking and I could barely insert the key. I took a deep breath and opened the door as softly as I could. "This time I'm going to make sure you two dogs are what you are." Soft chatter and laughter came from inside the house. I walked quietly towards the living room, the sound of my heart beating violently roaring in my ears. Then I saw them. Olivia and Jake are sitting on the couch, snuggling intimately. Jake has his hand on Olivia's leg while she is stroking his hair. There is an open bottle of red wine and 2 highball glasses on the table. I stood there and felt an intense wave of nausea. Although I had seen this scene countless times on surveillance, the pain was far beyond my imagination when I actually witnessed it. Ahem. I cleared my throat. They jerked apart, horrified expressions on their faces. Olivia's eyes were wide, her mouth open but unable to speak. Jake stood up quickly and straightened his clothes handily. "Michael," said Olivia, finally finding her voice, why are you back?" I looked at them coldly and felt a strange calmness. "Surprise, my dear. Looks like I interrupted something important for you guys." Jake tried to explain, "Look, man, it's not what you think." "Shut up," I interrupted, my voice low and dangerous. I turned to Olivia. 22 years of marriage for this? A young yoga instructor? Olivia begins to sob. "Michael, let me explain." "There's no need to explain," I said. "I've known everything for a long time. Your dates, your lies, everything you did behind my back." They looked at me in shock, obviously not expecting me to know so much. You've been spying on me?" Olivia asked, trembling. I laughed, but there was no joy in that laugh. I had to do it because my wife, the most important person in my life, chose to cheat and betray me. I walked towards the liquor cabinet and poured myself a glass of whiskey. I needed something to steady my nerves. "Now," I said, sipping my wine slowly, "let's talk about the divorce." The atmosphere in the room is so stark it's almost suffocating. Olivia sits on the couch, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. Jake stands off to the side, looking angry and embarrassed at the same time. As for me, I felt like I was trapped in a ridiculous pantomime. "Divorce?" Olivia finally broke the silence, her voice trembling. "Michael, please, we can talk?" I sneered. "Talk about what?" "Talk about how you betrayed our 22-year marriage. Or talk about the many times you and your little boyfriend cheated on us in our home. Do you guys think cheating on your husbands behind their backs in our home is the most exciting show ever?" Jake interjects suddenly. "Look, man, I know you're pissed off right now, but—" I turn to him sharply, furious. "You have no business talking here. Get out of my house while I'm still sane now." Jake glanced at Olivia as if seeking instructions. "But I've had enough." I said, "Get out." I growled, grabbing the bottle of wine on the coffee table. I wasn't sure I was actually going to throw it, but at that moment, I felt like I could do anything. Jake held his hands up and backed away slowly. Okay, I'm on my way." "Olivia, are you okay?" "She'll be fine," I said coldly. "Now, get the hell out of here." Jake took one last look at Olivia and then quickly left the house. I heard his motorcycle start and then fade away. Now, it's just Olivia and I left in the room. "Why?" I turned to her, pain in my voice. "Is our marriage so worthless to you?" Olivia sobbed. "It's not like that, Michael. I don't know how things got this way. I just feel lonely. You're always so busy and I feel like an appendage in your life." Her words pierced my heart like a knife. "So that's your solution? Find a younger man to fill your void?" Just then, the doorbell rang. We were all startled. I went to the door and through the cats I saw 2 policemen standing outside. "Shit," I curse under my breath. A neighbor must have heard us arguing and called the police. I took a deep breath and opened the door. "Good evening, sir," said one of the officers. "We were called to the scene of an altercation. Is everything all right?" I steeled myself. "It's nothing serious, officer. Just a little domestic dispute that we're working out." But Olivia suddenly appeared behind me, teary-eyed. "Officer, I was scared. I don't know what he'll do." Olivia's hand clutches the arm of the couch, her body trembling slightly, her eyes avoiding my gaze as if she's going to break down at any moment. I turned my head to look at her in disbelief. In this moment, I realized that the woman I once loved so much had become a complete stranger. The police officer got serious. "Sir, please come out with us for a moment." The next hour was a nightmare. I had to explain the whole situation to the police, including how I found out about my wife's affair and everything that had happened today. They took careful notes of my statement and then interviewed Olivia separately. In the end, the police decided not to arrest anyone, but suggested that we split up and calm down. Olivia seemed relieved. It was as if her heart was being crushed by a boulder and she couldn't breathe. She knew she had done wrong, but she couldn't control her fear. She couldn't face Michael's anger or the pain of losing Jake, while I felt a wave of powerlessness I had never felt before. "Sir, I suggest you find somewhere else to stay tonight," one of the officers told me, "and give each other some space, okay?" I nodded blankly, feeling a deep pang of loneliness. I had thought we were one, and now I had nowhere to go. Just as the police were about to leave, my cell phone rang. It was my daughter, Emily. I hesitated, then picked up the phone. "Hi, baby." "Dad?" Emily's voice was filled with worry. "What happened?" "I called the office, and they said you left suddenly. Are you okay?" I glanced over at Olivia, who was sitting on the couch with a vacant stare. I walked out onto the porch and lowered my voice. "Emily, I have some bad news for you. About me and your mom." When I finished saying everything, there was a long silence on the other end of the phone. Finally, I heard Emily say, "Daddy, I will always love you." "I'll be right back," she said firmly. "You shouldn't have to face this alone." After hanging up the phone, I felt a twinge of warmth. At least I wasn't completely alone in this storm. I went back inside and looked at Olivia and said, "Emily is coming back. You have to tell the kids the truth. It's something you have to deal with." When Emily came home, we had a long and painful night. My daughter sat between Olivia and I, trying to understand how this sudden storm had destroyed the family she had grown up in. Olivia cried uncontrollably, and all I felt was a wave of deep exhaustion. The next morning, I contacted my attorney and officially started the divorce process. When I handed Olivia the divorce papers, she looked both shocked and desperate. "Just like that?" she asked softly. 22 years of marriage and that's it?" I looked at her calmly. "No, Olivia. It wasn't just like that. It was your choice to end it." In the attorney's office, Olivia signed the papers with a shaky hand. I noticed she kept stealing glances at me, perhaps expecting me to change my mind at the last minute. But my mind was made up. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of emotions. We had to tell Emily and Noah the whole story about the divorce. Their reactions varied. Emily appeared angry and disappointed, while Noah was silent and confused. I tried to explain it to them, but there are some things that even adults have trouble fully understanding. Property division is another painful process. As the attorney predicted, the court favored an even division of our assets, including my retirement account. Watching years of savings being divided up filled me with bitterness. But I must admit that even the loss of that money was more painful than the loss of love and trust. We decided to sell our house, a place that was once filled with laughter and memories. As the sold sign stood in the front yard, I felt a strong sense of loss. This had been our home, but now it was a thing of the past. My children were my biggest support during this difficult time. Emily came to visit me often, sometimes bringing dinner she had made. Noah hugged me out of the blue one night and said, "Dad, you are not alone. You have us. We are proud of you." These are the moments that make it all worth it for me. The first few months after my divorce were the hardest. I moved into a small apartment with empty walls all around me, a reminder of the drastic changes in my life. Sometimes I would wake up in the middle of the night, forget where I was, and reach out to touch Olivia, only to feel cold sheets. But slowly, I began to rebuild my life. I went back to work, and although missing that important product launch had some impact on my career, my talents and experience were eventually recognized. I started attending social events, meeting new people, and even trying things I never thought I'd do before, like learning to cook and paint. One Saturday morning, 6 months later, I stood on the balcony of my new apartment and watched the sun pour over the city. My cell phone rang, and it was Emily. "Dad," came her excited voice, "I have great news for you. I've been accepted to Boston Children's Hospital, and I'm starting my residency next month." I felt an intense surge of pride and joy. "That's great, baby. We must celebrate." After hanging up, I realized I was smiling. It was the first time in the last few months that I had smiled from the bottom of my heart. I was reminded of the past, how Olivia and I met, got married, had children, and finally separated. The experience changed me and took something away from me, but it also gave me a new perspective and strength. I was no longer the one plagued by betrayal and anger. I began to forgive, not for Olivia, but for myself. I realized that only by letting go of the past could I truly begin a new life. Standing on the balcony, I took a deep breath. The sun shone warmly on my face, and the breeze caressed my hair. In this moment, I felt a peace and hope that I hadn't felt in a long time. Life goes on, and I'm ready for a new beginning. Whatever the future brings, I know I can handle it, because I've been through the worst and survived. I closed the balcony door and stepped inside. It was time to do something about Emily's good news. After all, there was so much to celebrate in life. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have a story to share about your own or someone else's experience, please feel free to contact me. Take care.